Thank you so much. Thank you for bringing up so many fascinating questions as well as presenting us with interesting facts. So we better move to the next paper, and I would like to introduce Dr. Franck Duvell, who is Associate Professor and Senior Researcher at the Central Migration Policy and Society here at St. Anthony's College. You need the PowerPoint. I think there is an obvious connection between the challenge of demography and the challenges of migration, some of them bringing up excruciating moral dilemmas, and Robert basically pointed towards them, because what we tend to forget about migration is that they create winners and losers in both societies, the societies which welcome newcomers, but also those from which newcomers originate. So I thought that question was pretty important.
Umbrella. And my umbrella. Any money.
Alright, Frank, can I ask you 20 minutes so that we have time?
We're here for half an hour, so I will see how it goes.
Well, we will just not have time for discussion if you go for half an hour.
I know that.
If you are okay with that,
I will now move on to migration, shifts in the global migration order, new patterns of mobility and migration transitions in Europe. I focus on the cases of Russia and Turkey, which I know best. I have some reference to China, even though I know basically nothing about China, but I was asked to try and bring in at least some references, which is what I do. My structure, what's the puzzle, what's the aim of the paper, then the shift in the global economic, political and migration orders, conceptual theoretical framework. I will keep that very short due to this time constraint, and then I jump into my two cases, compare different parameters, and then the conclusion. So the puzzle for migration researcher really is explaining the rise of Russia and Turkey as major immigration countries, the emergence of new visa-free travel regimes in the region, in the neighborhood of the European Union, and then second, to recognize, explain, and conceptualize new mobility patterns, migration transitions, and the rise of new immigration countries in the vicinity of Europe, and to consider how this relates or shapes migration and mobility globally, in Europe and in the EU. Briefly, we have seen significant shifts in the global economic, political and migration order. Economically, we need to recognize a whole list of economic crises: 1971 oil crisis, 87, 88 financial crises in Asia and Russia, 97 East Asia financial crisis, 2000 in Argentina, 2001 in Turkey, 2008 the US, European and then almost global financial crisis, 2014 the crisis in Russia due to the war and the sanctions. There is some sort of a crisis in Brazil. But apart from economic crisis, we have also seen, of course, the rise of the Gulf countries in the 70s. We have witnessed the industrialization of many countries in the global south, newly industrialized countries, the so-called Asian tigers. This sounds like ancient history, but it's only 45, 50 years ago. And then, of course, the economic transformation of the former socialist countries from the 1990s onwards. And more recently, talks of the emergence of the so-called BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, China, and South Africa, goes back to the journalist and economic observer O'Neill. And he also more recently invented the concept of the MINT countries, referring to Mexico, Indonesia, Nigeria, and Turkey, and their rise to new economic powers. And In political terms, over the recent decades, we have of course seen the rise of the European Union, of NAFTA, of the Eurasia Customs Union. Then we have the BRICS Council, Association of Southeast Asian Countries, African Union, Mercosur in South America, Arab League, Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Simultaneously to these regional bodies, we have seen the rise of global governance, UN, WTO, IOM, UNHCR, and what else there is. We have also witnessed significant rebordering processes related to the breakup of the Soviet Union, Yugoslavia, only two examples. Currently, another sort of major area of transformation is related to wars, revolutions, civil wars. Currently, there are at least 40 armed conflicts worldwide. These are actually decreasing in numbers, but increasing in the number of people who are affected. And socially, we have just heard, we have witnessed the global population growth, we have seen aging, but we have also witnessed some significant gender imbalances in certain parts of the world. In recent years, with the political developments, we witnessed some unmixing of populations, like Russians moving back from the former Soviet Union countries back into Russia. Members of these Soviet Union countries moved back to their perceived home countries. Ukrainians moving back to Ukraine, Kazakhs to Kazakhstan, and so on. But also, obviously, migration is informed by global inequality and poverty. It is still over 1 billion people. I don't really trust the way it is measured by the World Bank. We have recently witnessed record levels of forced displacement. It's now probably up to 65 million people internally displaced or internationally displaced, then called refugees. And we have seen a rise of global mobility. This has doubled in 20 years, and mobility means any type of travel. We have also seen a rise in international migration, but rather an absolute number than a relative number. The part of the population that is considered international migrants is still just over 3–3.5%. But another Gallup survey found that another 630 million people worldwide have the ambition to migrate. Now to my conceptual framework, which I keep very brief here. Migration transition. This is often referring to a country's transition from one level of modernity to another level of modernity, and according shifts from a net emigration country to a net immigration country. So countries become immigration countries, they can become attractive to people who want to migrate, and this concept is useful for linking migration systems and system theory to wider socio-economic change. And then I talk a bit about the migration order. This is certainly a new and underdeveloped concept. It helps to analyze changes in global economic and political opportunity structures, and this is what I've just sketched, in the sending and receiving context, and new geographies and new flows of new types of migrants. To my comparison, the two countries, this is just an example, Russia and Turkey. The cases are similar and different. We have similarities in terms of migration. Both are now net immigration countries since the early mid-2000s, so relatively recently. Economically, both enjoy significant economic growth. Both aspire to consolidate role as regional, in the case of Russia, even global powers. Both introduced relatively liberal visa regimes, facilitating mobility and migration. Both face certain danger. They have imbalanced economies. Russia relies heavily on the oil and gas revenues. Turkey's economy partly is a bubble, fueled by cheap money. In terms of differences, these are also remarkable. Russia is an aging and shrinking country. Turkey is still has still a growing population, but is also going through an aging process. In terms of politics, Russia is a political bloc in its own right. Turkey is to some extent allied to the West, but everything's sort of changing. And certainly Turkey's neighborhood is a lot more volatile than the neighborhood of Russia. Volatile in terms of look at Syria, look at Iraq, look at the Caucasus. Also, internal mobility is very high in Turkey, in particular from eastern to western Turkey, but is rather low in Russia. My first example, the case of Russia. In terms of flows, 1995 there were only 10 million people moving in and out of what's now Russia. 2012, and I couldn't find more recent figure that has more than doubled to 26 million people. In terms of stocks of immigrants, just after the collapse of Soviet Union, there were only 120,000 foreigners registered in Russia. We have to be careful here because of the statistics, which are highly unreliable. In any case, that has now risen. In 2013. There were 2.7 million foreign workers, plus 7.5 to 8 million people who were not registered, irregular immigrants. This has now risen because law and statistics have changed to 11 million registered foreigners in Russia. 30% of these are from Uzbekistan. Second largest group would be Tajiks. Only 13% are from non-former Soviet Union, in other words, CIS countries. There are 237,000 registered migrants from China. This is one official figure. Not everybody is registered. Other sources say it could be 500,000, it could be up to 2 million. But this is hugely unreliable. There are 5,000 refugees plus 150,000, some say 250,000 displaced persons from Ukraine. Population has been shrinking and continues to shrink down to 135 million in 2025. But 7 of the countries neighboring Russia have rising and growing populations. GDP per capita between 2000 and 2012 rose significantly from $1,800 to $14,600 due to the crisis. This has plummeted to somewhere, I can't find my notes here, to somewhere like $9,600. Policy, as I've said, is rather determined by the Soviet past, the Commonwealths of independent states, customs union, this space of visa-free travel of all these countries, and some other countries. In terms of the economics, you can clearly see that Russia has the highest capita per country of all the countries in the entire region. Just look how much higher it is in countries like Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, where most of the migrant workers in Russia come from. The visa-free travel, this is maybe interesting, all the CIS countries, but also a range of other countries with which Russia has visa-free travel arrangements. Here you see the inflow of labor into Russia, really picking up from the early 2000s here. It's quite volatile, it's quite dynamic. I can only show you the numbers up until 2013, because in 2012, 2013 the law has changed. Previously irregular migrants were regularized. You have much higher numbers here. 11 million foreigners are now registered. But because of the change in the law and the regulation and registration procedures, we can't compare the pre-2013 with the post-2013 figures. And here you see the simultaneous development of GDP moving up, dropping, increasing again. It would drop here, 2014, because of the sanctions and the crisis. It coincides, but I won't say correlates, with immigration. Immigration goes up, drops when the economy drops, rises again. There is a paradox here. The drop in the GDP due to the recent crisis is not yet reflected in any drop in the migration figures. But there is this uncertainty that we cannot really know about developments of migration because we can't compare before and after 2013 figures. The other reason is you can also clearly see migration is always lagging behind economic development. People wait and see until they get the message. It's now attractive to move to Russia. They also stay and weather the crisis, hoping that things will improve. We have noticed in the case of Russia, for instance, instead of people moving back to their countries of origin, where they have very little prospect of finding livelihoods, they move into other parts of Russia. So they rather respond by internal migration. Also they move into other industries, from urban areas to rural areas. Because of the sanctions, Russia needs to produce more agricultural goods herself. There is a higher demand for labor. So in the current situation, even though there is a drop in the GDP, people have not been moving back to their countries, but rather to other parts of Russia.
So you said 5 more minutes.
Sorry?
5 more minutes.
I will see. And now quickly the case of Turkey. Flows have tripled. Immigration has tripled significantly from over 1 million here to around 4.5 million here. But this includes a very large number of forcefully displaced people from Syria, 2.5 million people. Previously, migration was mostly ethnic Turks. This has changed significantly. There are people from many more parts of the world now. Population is about 75 million now, continues to grow to 86 million, but is aging. GDP has almost fivefold here, from threefold, from 4,000 in 2012 to 10,700 in 2012. It has dropped also because of economic crisis. Here you can see where people stand in international comparison. 3 countries, Kazakhstan, Russia, Greece, have higher GDPs. Many other countries have significantly lower GDPs. Policy inspired by neo-Ottomanism. Turkey also aspires to become a regional power. Volatile regions, visa-free travel with 55 countries in the world. You see how migration correlates with the GDP. We only have 3 observations for migration, so I can't have a nice line, but you see GDP goes up, immigration goes up as well. Is China the next transition country? We don't know. I have found figures for 995,000 registered immigrants. There must be more who are not registered. I found numbers of 300,000 populations of concerns, they are called by UNHCR, in other words, refugees. 1.37 billion is the population aging. GDP has fivefold, which certainly is attractive to people who have a need to migrate in the other poorer countries. We have a new migration law in China. The policy aim is to attract skilled migrants in particular. To conclude what I've said so far, and this is unfortunately because I prepared this for another context, a fairly Eurocentric perspective. The EU obviously is no longer the only migration destination in the region. In the neighborhood of the European Union, there are several other destination countries for migrants, amongst them Russia, Kazakhstan, Turkey, of course also the Gulf countries, and before the conflict, and even now, Libya is still attracting large numbers of migrants, up to 1 million. And this points to important shifts in the regional and in the global migration order. People who wish to migrate have alternatives, even though their choices might be first choice, secondary choice, and third choice. This certainly diverts migration from the EU, diminishes the migration pressure that the EU fears so much, but it also creates competition, which is also overlooked. Competition over migrants. All these aging countries talk about migrant workers, skilled migrants, replacement population. Where are they supposed to come from if many of the countries that we talk about have the same aging population? That leads indeed to depopulation, to loss of population. Ukraine is a case I know that. Ukraine lost 7 million of its population from 51 to 45 million. Because people move everywhere. They move east to Russia, they move west to the EU, they move south to Turkey. So the country is depopulating at some space. I try to depict what I've said and summarized by this graphic migration system in Europe and beyond. Last night, around midnight, I ended in China, which is a major sending country. China is known for migration sending countries. There are talks of 35 million migrants, but there are also these 600 or more thousand migrants in China from Vietnam, from Korea, from Africa. It's aging, economically powerful, needs skills, so this can easily go up. China can also start attracting migrants from the countries that were part of the Soviet Union. There could be migration from Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan into China if it is permitted, if there is a need. Otherwise, these are the sort of main blocks that characterize the new migration order. And this is my last slide and the last depiction. What I suggest is that on the political level of global migration management, we had in the past an image of the EU being the main attracting migrants from many parts of the world. This is as much as an image as it is outdated and wrong anyway. The new situation rather is that we have a space of freedom of movement within the European Union, still 28 member states, over 500 million people allowed to move freely, but we also have a zone of freedom of mobility with Russia and Turkey at the core, where we have far-reaching visa-free travel arrangements within which people can, to some extent, more or less move freely. But there is a convergence zone, as I call it, of limited mobility between these two zones. Moving from outside of the European Union into the European Union is highly restricted, complicated, and not the easiest thing in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Great that you finished by also including China, because we are now moving to cover China, and I want to introduce again Professor Wang. Do you want to do another?
Yes. Hello everyone. Because I'm leaving this afternoon, so I was just told I must go back to pack the checkout. I'm sorry I didn't do it this morning. That's my fault. And yes, today my topic is the domestic migration of Chinese Muslims. Actually, I'm not a sociologist or expert on population. I'm doing the research on Islam itself. So here I'm going to give to show some phenomenon is happening in China today and my analysis about this kind of phenomenon. Before I start my presentation, I'd like to show you some general information about my presentation. I suppose most of you know very well about China. Still, I'd like to show some data. Actually, at first, I'd like to say history of Islam in China maybe is quite different with the history of Islam in Europe. Islam in China has a history more than 1,000 years, and the Muslim living in China is not the immigrants, or not. They are also not the second generation of immigrants. They have been there for maybe generations after generations and for 1,000 years. And now the whole population of Muslim in China, it's estimated as 23 million. It's from the National Association of Islamic it's from the National Association of Islam. And there's also another problem. 70% of the Muslims lives in northwestern Chinese provinces, including Xinjiang, Gansu, Qinghai, and Ningxia. If you know something about China, you will know the western areas are much more undeveloped than the eastern and the central area. That's the problem. And the main body of Chinese Muslim belongs to the 10 ethnic groups. We call it Minzu in Chinese. And also sometimes it could be translated as the minority nationalities. During this, among these 10 ethnic groups, the biggest one is Hui nationality. The second biggest one is the Uyghur. So you can see that from this slide, so I won't repeat. And in China, you can see very historic mosques here and there. That's a mosque maybe built 1,000 years ago. It's in Quanzhou and Fujian during the South Song dynasty. And also you can find the very Chinese the Islamic structures here, the buildings here and there. That's a Sufi order in Gansu province. It's quite typical Chinese. You can see that. And also, I will show you a map of northwest China. That's from the book by Matthew Erin. He works upstairs. I just picked this picture from his book, his new book, because it's in English. We can see this is the map of the northwest China, and that's its location in whole China. I still have some other more general informations. Actually, I shared it with all of you at the end of the last session. I think you also have some concept about this kind of phenomenon. Through these numbers, I think you can find the floating population is increasing very fast, and also the floating Muslim are estimated to 3 billion, at least 3 billion today. There are two types of migration for for the domestic migration of Chinese Muslim. The first one is the short distance migration. That means the Muslim living in the small cities and rural area move to the larger cities in northwestern provinces. Such as from the South Xinjiang to Urumqi, or from the other cities in Gansu move to Lanzhou, such kind of migration. Another one I think we can call it long distance migration. That means the Muslim living in the northwest move to the central and the southeastern provinces. We also can divide it into two types. The first type is the Muslim who just moved to the cities with significant Muslim community, such move to Shanghai, move to Nanjing. The second type is the Muslim move to the cities with few Muslims, because it caused different type of social problems and other kind of problem in these cities. It's quite different. Now I'm showing you a picture from Yiwu Airport. Yiwu is a city, it's a small city in Zhejiang province, but it has developed into an international commercial hub during the last maybe 20 years. It was a city without Muslim, but now today it has a Muslim population, maybe more than 20,000 from all over the world. We can see on this board the advertisement on different kind of languages, especially Arabic and Russian, Arabic, also Farsi and Russian and Chinese, different kind of characters. That's the mosque in Yiwu after the Friday prayer. We can see the different kinds of people just coming here and do their prayer here. This picture was taken maybe nearly 10 years ago. I was there that day. I found that there are more than maybe 5,000 people just did their prayer that day. Yeah. But the imam of this mosque told me it's not the biggest one. It's not the biggest one. Sometimes they have more Muslims to come to attend the prayer. And now the Yiwu Muslim in Yiwu also built another new mosque. It's a very grand mosque, but I did not go during these few years. And I would also like to share my analysis about the Muslim migration in China. Actually, we can find something quite different about the about the floating Muslim at the other floating population. The first one I will mention here is the characteristics of ethnic belongings. I just said the two biggest ethnic group of 10 minorities who are Muslims. The first one is Hui, the second one is the Uyghur. But if you do a research from some surveys in the central and the eastern provinces, we will find the majority of floating Muslims are Hui, and the Uyghur people are are not so much of the Uyghur people in the eastern cities. There are also some data, so you can see it. Of course, there are many reasons which cause this kind of situation, but for the very limited time, I cannot explore on these points here. If you are interested, we can do it during the lunchtime, I think. The second characteristics of Muslim migration, I think it's the very obvious gender imbalance. If you do field work about the Muslim migration, you will find those people who just leave their house and find a job in the city or have some business in the city. The majority of them are males. Quite few women are on this part of the population. But we all know, because the female compare with the male Muslim and also the female non-Muslim, they may have some disadvantages in job market. Maybe that's one of the reasons. I also...
Is the 43% the number of women moving? What are you comparing with?
Comparing of the general floating population for the other the other
whole
people.
Chinese community.
Yes, yes. So half and has almost half and half, but for the Muslim women, very lower.
And these are women going for work, not as wives.
What?
Don't worry.
Okay. Actually, during the research, we will found that most of the floating Muslim in China also have the same motive or motivation as the ordinary floating population. That is, they want to have a better job, they want to have a better life, they want to have some maybe have a richer life, something like that. But they have different choices during they choose their job or they choose their career. There are two special elements in occupational choices are very clear. The first one is the business of halal food or catering. Many Chinese Muslims open and run the restaurant of halal food in the big cities here and there. You can find it maybe anywhere in China's cities. The second one is there maybe advantage of using the Arabic languages. We all know Islamic scripture was revealed by Arabic. For Chinese Muslims, they also love to learn Arabic languages. We have maybe more than nearly 30 universities who have the major about Arabic studies in China today. And there are also so many Arabic training program, especially in northwest China. So many young Muslims choose to learn Arabic. So they could be the commercial translators and interpreters, sometimes as the business agent with the Arabic countries to do the business. Especially in EU, I just showed pictures. Many young Muslims just come and go there and work as an interpreter or open their own business with Arabic world. Here, I mentioned the halal food. Halal food is quite popular in China. So some of the halal restaurants was very good and very luxurious. But most of the time, the halal restaurants are quite small, just run by a family or several families or family with their relatives. They are very quite slow. Oh, you will see it here and there. Yeah, that's halal Lanzhou beef noodle soup shop. You can find it anywhere. And there is very interesting phenomena. Even in Wuxi, there's a research about the halal restaurant in Wuxi. Wuxi is not a big city, and it only have 2,000 Muslim populations there. But they have this kind of small halal restaurant, more than 600, and it's a big business there. And for the Uyghurs, they usually have something like the bakery food or this kind of business. This is a very interesting picture because this is a couple of Uyghur people. They adopted this Han boy as their son. Okay, I'm going to. I think I save a lot of time here. And now I'd like to maybe share some of my observations, analysis about this kind of phenomenon. First of all, I'd like to say the floating Muslim, just as the other floating population in China, they are facing the same problems, and sometimes it would be quite cruel. Maybe it's difficult to deal with it. So the first one is equal rights for the social participation and the social welfare, such as how could your children go to school in the city without the registration, and medical care are also for the our mission something especially concerned by the Muslim population next. And also the second problem is the social adaptation, how to adapt themselves to the local or modern society or modern city. It's a big question. The third one is the challenge of state governing and law. We all know that for the Muslim people, they have some customary law. Sometimes it's about the Sharia law or some kind of things. But if you come to the city, sometimes it conflicts with the government state law and the city regulations. So it causes many problems in city administration, I said. Okay. I want to give some, I have many examples of these kind of things, but it seems I don't have time. I like to say usually the local governments help to solve these kind of problems that some Uyghur people, they were trained to be the bakery or this kind of business. And also in some cities they opened they opened a school to teach especially the language for the Uyghur people, because they have there's language differences between Uyghur and the Han people and with other Chinese. So this is the problem. And actually, this picture showed this kind of conflict between the Muslims' life and the modern city. It's a festival ceremony. After the fasting month of Muslims. So many Muslims that's in Xining, the capital city of Qinghai, many people just went to mosque to celebrate their festivals. But there are so many people here, so they block the whole streets. So that's the problem. The other people can't pass by, and it also may cause some other problems. So maybe the people living around this area maybe not so satisfied with their behaviors. So these kind of things always happen between the local residents and the Muslim. Also sometimes between the Muslim and the foreign Muslim, the Muslim from outside and the Muslim in local communities. And there are also some specific problems concerned with the floating Muslims' religious identity. The first one is how to live in a big city as a Muslim. Actually, I think it's a challenge for them. I will give you some examples, such as how to get the supply of halal food in workplace and the school. Also, how could you get to the religious sites and get the religious service? Sometimes even how could you get Muslim burial when unexpected death happens, because you will have these kind of problems. This is a sign of the halal food. Usually Chinese Muslim like to choose the restaurant with this kind of signs. This is the halal food symbol. If there's no such a sign, they will say it's not good to eat, or not halal, not legal to eat it. So there's many problems for them. And the second problem for them is how could they deal with the local Muslim communities? They are brothers, but most of the time they are just outsiders. So this is a big question also for them. For some of the floating Muslims, they may consider the local Muslims empires, not so religious. They do something. They always do things on the wrong way, or not on a very good way. But however, the local Muslims may regard some behaviors of floating Muslim as superstitious. You are so uncivilized, so you did something very silly. These kind of things always happen. And there is also another problem. for the floating Muslims. That means it's difficult for them to participate in the administration of local mosques. Even they always go to the mosque, but it's hard for them to become the member of the administration of mosque affairs. Okay, we can see a mosque in modern cities. That's in Nanjing, in Jiangsu province. We can see the old mosques just surrounded by the high rises of modern city. So actually, the space for you are quite limited. And we also see this is a picture in Quanzhou. Here, the mosque attendees, most of them are workers from the northwest. Most of the time, the imam are also hired from northwest because there's no Muslims. So the mosque is quite simple, and they are so different. Quite different. Okay, that's my last point. That is the challenges that the floating Muslims in contemporary China. The first one, I think the challenge is the floating Muslims' influence to traditional framework of Chinese Muslims. In the traditional world, Chinese Muslims always live centered around a mosque with leadership of imam, or we call it ahom in China, in Chinese. But now when the people just leave their hometown, they scattered to the big cities here and there, and it's difficult for the traditional framework to keep on. No people, maybe there is a mosque, but no people go, and no people will give money to the mosque. So it's difficult. And the second one is the challenge for the government administration of religious affairs. Because we all know, under the registration system in China, the local government always are in charge of religious affairs of their registered residents. But now people just live, or just there are so many Muslims come from the other area. They have different culture, they have different tradition, they have different opinions about on the same thing. So it's difficult for the local government to handle with this kind of things. So it's also a challenge. Okay, let me finish my presentation. This is a mosque for floating Muslim. It's in the suburb of Wulongji. You can see it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we have just over 10 minutes for a discussion of two papers. But we will start with the second paper because you.
Okay, thank you.
Right, so I would like to invite the second discussant, Kim Jian Chan.
My question is to Professor Wang or
Yes.
Yes, I'm leaving. I'm sorry. I have to talk.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm quite interested in the integration of the Muslims in the eastern part of China, because I lived in Beijing for 6 years, and it occurs to me that it's very rare that I get old Muslim people in Beijing. Most of the Muslims I met is in the restaurant, working there, some kids, but that's so I think maybe they all want to, they cannot stay in the big city when they get old. So I just wonder if there are some kind of special policies from the government side to encourage them, or just to make some kind of sort of accommodation for the Muslims in the western part when they get old.
When they are getting old, when they are back into their hometown.
No, I mean, is there any kind of special policy for the integration?
Integration.
Of the Muslim kind of integration in the eastern part.
I don't think on the official level, there's no. I don't know this kind of policy to encourage integration. I never know that.
So
in the official levels, no.
So they're just kind of like
like the ordinary people, just like the ordinary floating people. There's nothing special. There's no special policy for just for the floating Muslim. I don't think so. No.
Okay.
Thank you, Laura. I have two questions to ask Professor Wang. When speaking of the Muslim, I also link the Muslim with the ISIS. Yeah. So, do you think the migration of the Muslim will bring some threats to the area they will settle down? And the second question is, as we all know, both Islam and Buddhism are also the foreign religions. And the Buddhism was introduced in China in Han Dynasty, and in Sui and Tang Dynasty, the mature and flourishing period, during which schools contended with each other, and the Zen Buddhism, the Chan Buddhism, is also the typical sect of the synthesization of Buddhism. So I would like to ask the second question is, why Islam was not so successful to be integrated with the traditional Chinese culture as is the Buddhism? Okay, thank you.
Can I pick up two more questions and then you might address?
I will try. I will try.
Okay. So, here.
There's
This is and then. Okay. Can you take 4 questions?
I'm not sure.
If you keep your questions.
It depends on Paul. Maybe I'll leave as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry for that.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. It was very, very impressive, and the things I don't understand are also very informative as well. But one thing that I noticed is that there are so many the news about the tension between Han Chinese and Uyghurs. I think this has to be mentioned, because when you're choosing this topic, is there any reason why you didn't mention about it, and you instead show the photo of the Uyghur families who adopted Han Chinese sand? That photo itself is a very beautiful photo.
But it seems to defy the reality of conflict.
Yes, harmonization of the ethnic relationship. But
good point.
Professor,
Let's move.
Actually, I have 2 questions. One
Maybe choose just one, and then we will have 10 more minutes for the other paper.
Okay. Okay. In this community, Muslim community in China, the division among Sunnis and Shiites, can it be noticed, and how it is handled by the government?
You mean the different sects?
Yes.
Okay.
The Sunni Shiites.
Okay. No problem.
I actually would like to address Professor.
Okay, then
Okay.
just one more.
I'd like to know how strong is the independentist movement of Muslims in Xinjiang for the independent.
What movement?
The independentist movement of
Independent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you talk about independent?
Sure, I can talk everything, but it's not a political debate. But I also have very limited time.
Yes.
I don't think I can explore. I can expand all my opinions here. At first, I'd like to answer the question from Song Xia. I think if you just related Islam with ISIS, you are quite wrong. That's a simple answer. I can tell you more after this conference. The second one is something like the localization of Buddhism and Islam and Islam. Maybe from your point of view, you think Buddhism is quite a success about localization. But from our point of view, as Islamic researchers in China, we all think Islam in China is successfully localization. Integrated, especially about the Hui nationalities. Of course, there are some problems about the Uyghur people, but still we are going on this way, localization. There's no other way to do for such a big country. We cannot have something like Islamophobia, just like European countries, because
integration is the only way.
I'm not sure about how to use integration, because it seems sometimes in Western context, you think integration is something, maybe something bad. I don't think so. From my point of view, we just stay in the country. Chinese people always say we are not same, but we can live together. That's the way we can do
but
for
that,
the future.
that brings us to the other question that pointed out was the tension between the
there's always tensions between the different ethnic groups. Such as in the United States, you have black and white tension, and in China, we also have Han and Uyghur. There are also something like the Uyghur and the Hui. If you live in Xinjiang, you will find sometimes the Hui Muslims are believed as the same group with Han. The Han and the Hui are together, and just on the opposite, it seems it's the Uyghur people. About the picture you just talked about, because I took it this summer when I visited Xinjiang. There are also many stories of this kind of, how to say that, people just in the maybe grassroots level, people are not so divided as you imagine, but from the political perspectives, there's kind of tension between it. And the last question is the Shia and Sunni, the conflicts kind of things. And I would like to tell you, maybe 99 or 98% of Chinese Muslims are Sunni. So there's no such a big Shia Muslim community in China. I visited the Shia community in Shache, that's in South Xinjiang. That's quite small. Only have 500 or 600 people there. But they are also facing some very difficult situation, because for them the pressure is not coming from the government. The pressure is coming from the main body of Uyghur people, Sunnis, because they are believed as the minority. They are not allowed to do some special religious service, such as this kind of things. So the sectarian conflicts happens in China, but not this kind of Sunni and Shia one, because Chinese Muslims has their own sects. They have we call it the old sect, that's the Qadim in Arabic. We also have the new sect, it was called the Ikhwani. They also have the latest sect, it was called Salafi. And we also have Sufi orders. Sometimes the different groups do have conflicts, but not this kind of Sunni and Shia way. So, thank you. Thank you all. If you are interested in my topic, you can come to me during the lunchtime. I will come back for lunch. Thank you.
So now we still have 10 minutes for the other paper.
Sorry.
So we might start again with discussing.
Thank you, Professor Duvell. I also prepared a question for you. And I'm quite interested in the case of Turkey. We know in the refugee issues right now, one of the main topics is a visa-free contract between Turkey and the European Union. And that seems to me that maybe Turkey is not facing with a very big, very severe domestic geographical problem, because they want to send their workers to European Union. Am I maybe wrong? I want to listen to your opinion.
Shall we have a few more questions?
Yeah, we can collect a few questions and then we combine them. How many people want to ask? I can see. Okay. Wait, yeah, please. Yes,
okay, thank you very much, Professor, for the presentation. I really much enjoyed it. Even though it left me a little bit disoriented, if you can say that, because I've been studying the issue, and I've always thought that Europe is actually the country of destination, and the Turkey is a transit country. But if I've got it right, in your presentation you say the opposite. So I would like if you can just briefly a little bit elaborate that a little bit further, just because it's actually.
That's kind of an expansion on the first question.
My question is related to Russia. in my opinion, Russia is not a migrant-friendly country, and
that's an understatement.
However, on the other hand, it has also one of the lowest fertility rates in the world. So Russian population is expected to decrease, I mean, and age. Do you think that, can you explain better the relation between migration in Russia, so this closure of migration, and the fertility rate? Do you think, is there any relations, or the government is thinking about changing something?
Okay, let me respond to these questions. First, Turkey. The perception of Turkey as an emigration country is outdated, and it's long outdated. This is a myth popularized in Europe by the European Union, voicing certain anxieties. Turkey, like 15, 20 years ago, stopped to be a major country of emigration. First of all, because of the economic success and the economic transformation of Turkey from an agricultural to an industrial country operating on the highest and globally competitive level in certain industries. It manages to absorb its population and labor forces relatively well. And I referred to the high level of internal mobility from the still growing and useful east of the country to the already aging and shrinking population in the west, which is compensated by internal east-west migration. Emigration from Turkey is now on a very low level, no more than 30, 40, 50,000 people per year. It is mostly highly skilled or least skilled, in particular to Russia, to the Gulf countries, to other parts of the world. It is mostly temporary and project-based, meaning people move back. You would be surprised to hear about Turkish bankers in the Moscow banking sector who are working on the highest level of financial product. This is the type of Turkish emigration that we see now. And Turkey became indeed a net immigration country about 15 years ago, around the year 2000, because of the drop in emigration and an increase in immigration. There are two types of immigration. Everything is overshadowed by migration of refugees from Syria and Iraq, but before the war we already saw the migration transition and the arrival of non-forced economic migrants into Turkey from Russia, from Ukraine, from Georgia, from Iraq, from Egypt, from the Gulf countries, from many other parts of the world. Of course, not only workers, we shouldn't forget retirement migration from all the European countries, including Russia. People making businesses in Turkey and finally settling down. So this is the type of migration in Turkey. Russia is a bit of a paradox to me, because it is one of the countries with the fastest aging and shrinking population in the world, apart from Ukraine, from Poland and some other Eastern European countries, but doesn't seem to be coming to terms with the fact that it needs immigration, that there is immigration, that there is a new level of diversity. This is even more disturbing because the Russian Federation in itself is a fairly sort of diverse sort of country. There is an enormous tension between the people who perceive themselves as Russian nationals and then sort of other nationalities within the Russian Federation. And this tension is not unique to Russia. We find it also in the European Union. We find it in the discourse moving away from immigration to temporary migration, temporary labor migration, migration partnerships. So the Russian migration policy model very much is that of attracting labor migrants, but distracting permanent immigration, settling down, regularization, becoming citizens and all the rest of it. It relies very much on supply of labor from the Central Asian republics. I've shown this: Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and so on. And I have not yet analyzed it in great detail. But to be honest, I find it similar to the previous South African policy of introducing kind of homelands for the working people who are allowed in on a temporary basis, rather sort of limited rights granted to them, who are then expected to move back when their time is over, when the contract is over. And Russia enforces a very high level of mobility through high levels of deportations, accompanied by re-entry bans. So there is a very large turnover in force, probably only possible because of the high sort of pool of supply in the countries where people come from. If that answered the two questions, I'm not sure I maybe missed an aspect.
Yeah, we can do one more question, but please keep it brief.
Yes, I just was wondering about those visa-free policies in Russia and Turkey. I mean, coming from Finland, I know that Russia has this like visa-free for Europeans for 72 hours, but it's mainly based to just and for like for the consumption purposes. So European goes there just as tourists, spend 72 hours. And I was wondering if there's also some other visa, like what are the other kinds of visa-free policies that actually allow people to work?
That's a good question. I would extend it because I think it was touched upon also in the very first comment that the EU deal that is being negotiated with Turkey about visa-free movement and also has its limitations, etc. So maybe if you could briefly comment on those, and we don't have to finish.
Yes, the issue of visa policy is a little more complex and has many more nuances than I could present in my short presentation. The main feature is that Russia maintains a policy of visa-free travel with all its Central Asian neighbors, the former Soviet Union republics, and thereby facilitates mobility within the region. Similar thing is true for Turkey. Turkey maintains a visa-free regime with many countries in the world, including the European Union, but also on top of this has sort of replaced its previous visa-free regime with 55 other countries in the world with a very easy, simple to apply to e-visa regime, where you just apply online. The only condition is you pay a fee, then you print the visa yourself, arrive at the border, that's it. So to the EU, Turkey can demonstrate, oh, we request visa, but de facto there are no requirements, there are no checks. You don't need to have all these usual documents about your income and family and property and that you return back and all the rest of it. The arrangements between Russia and the EU and Turkey and the EU are more complex. Usually European citizens would need to apply to one of these Russian visa, work, humanitarian and all the rest of it. There are a few exemptions, as you say, but I would argue that this is not contradicting the general pattern that there are visa requirements between the two countries. Russians have to apply, EU citizens have to apply. Russia had for a long time before the invasion of Ukraine and Crimea, violence and war and sanctions, all the rest of it, visa-free travel was on the agenda. Russia suggested a visa-free regime encompassing the whole region between Vladivostok and Brest, basically, but that never materialized. Turkey is basically requiring the same, very much for domestic purposes, because the current president always promised to his citizens visa-free travel. Is not going to happen in any near future. It was always contested because it requires consent by all the 28 member states, and we knew for sure that certain governments would not agree to that. Not even exempting certain professions like academics is on the agenda any longer. But I personally don't really believe that in retaliation Turkey would now drop its border controls and let so-and-so many million Syrians, Iraqis or other people move into the EU. That would alienate relations even further. It is in the air, it is a threat. It might be relaxed on a temporary basis just to demonstrate to the EU that Turkey could do that. But honestly, I don't see this happening. That would be one step too far. That would finally break the relationships between EU and Turkey.
Thank you. Well, please join me in thanking our presenter. It was a fantastic.